Hello and welcome to week 6 of our special Circa Sports Contest podcast. Matt Brown and Brett Collson. And Brett, I don't want to harp on it too long. We've had better weeks. Last week was the pits. Last week was absolutely horrible.
Was brutal.
Yeah. Last week was the pits. Last week was absolutely horrible. So we will just kind of put that behind us, move on here, and hopefully we can rally from what was just a pretty terrible 5 picks by us. But hey, it is what it is. We're going to move on here. We have a week 6 slate where, guess what? We did have a couple of games where we are on the same side here, so that's good. It wasn't like last week where we were not of like mind of anything, which I think that is probably not very that lets you know the week is probably pretty weird whenever we're not even agreeing on any of the games that we bring to the table here. We only have one where we're on opposite sides this week, and then we have a couple that I think will be pretty interesting to talk through here. Let's start with a couple of games that we are on the same side here, and this actually also happens to be your must make, which is the Steelers +7 over the Chargers.
Yeah, this Steelers defense is sneaky good, and I like them +7 against the Chargers this week. They are second in the league in rushing the passer, according to Pro Football Focus, 6th in overall defense. They get after the quarterback. They force hurries. They create turnover chances, and I don't know how the Chargers are going to contain this unit. Chargers 23rd in pass blocking. They just lost their center, Mike Pouncey, to the IR. Who knows who his backup is? This is just not the same Chargers team as the one that made the playoffs last year. I don't think the market has fully adjusted on them yet. There are holes everywhere in this defense. Derwin James is still not back. Melvin Ingram hasn't practiced all week. He's unlikely to play. This defense already ranks 25th overall right now. I think whoever the Steelers roll out quarterback, we still don't know who it's going to be yet, but I think they're going to be fine. They found ways to move the ball against the Bengals and the Ravens the last 2 weeks. I think they're going to be able to do enough here to cover the 7 points pretty easily. There's just nothing impressive about this Chargers squad to make them a touchdown favorite against a young team that appears to be improving every week. I really like Pittsburgh in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me, it would shock me if Mason Rudolph actually made it onto the field. I don't know about you. I mean, it will probably get the law firm of Devlin Hodges under center right there, which definitely that should be a guy. Have you been injured in an accident? Call Devlin Hodges. Like, it's definitely something like that. But look, Steelers defense, 7th overall DVOA. Their defensive line ranks 2nd in adjusted sack rate. They have the 3rd most sacks in the league already. Kind of gone under the radar for the Steelers team. Probably not something, if I had not looked this up, that I would have been really on top of if someone would have quizzed me on this. And the Chargers offensive line has given up the most quarterback hits in the league so far this year. And as you mentioned, lost their center, Mike Pouncey, to the IR. TJ Watt should go nuts in this game against this Chargers team. And I got to be honest with you. You look at this Chargers defense as well. They're playing a bunch of 2nd and 3rd stringers. Everybody's hurt. And it's not their fault. It just is what it is. This team gets bitten by the injury bug more than any team in the NFL over the last few years. And this year being no exception. And they gave up, over 190 yards on the ground last week. And this Steelers team is going to be able to roll out James Conner and I think have some really good success on the ground. And when they have to go to the air, I mean, look, they still have Juju Smith-Schuster. He hasn't really broken out so far this year. He hasn't really shown out so far this year, but that doesn't mean that he's not there. And he is there. And I think that, I don't know if you watched the all 22 of this or whatever, when Devlin Hodges actually came in. I rewatched this game back. I'd never heard of him before. I went and kind of looked up a little bit of what I could figure out about the guy. But from what I saw when he actually came in, he looked like he was fine with kind of pushing the ball down the field and being a little aggressive and stuff. And, listen, I'm okay with that. I would much rather a young guy come in and play like that, especially against a defense like the Chargers right here that are running out a bunch of backups, than than talking about these guys that are just game managers throwing all these dinks and dunks, like, behind the line of scrimmage and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the game plans they've had for Mason Rudolph the last 2 weeks, I think were good enough because they have been able to rely on this defense. And it's a defense that I pegged as a really sneaky potentially top 5 unit coming into the year. So I have been following week after week. And after that week 1 where they just got destroyed by the Patriots, I was like, all right, well, this was a bad read, obviously. But they are growing as a unit every single week. This is a very good defense. And offensively, the Steelers don't have to do much to not only cover, but I think this is a really good money line spot too.
Also, getting the full touchdown here is also something I'm feeling pretty good about as well. Now, look, there's a chance that they get Hunter Henry back, and he's certainly a playmaker for this team, but they did come out and say that even if he does play, it would be on a snap count. So it's not like it's one of those situations where he would 100% be out there, the majority of the time on the field. And so, for you and I, we follow, the actual player performances a ton. And, we know that Hunter Henry, when he's actually on the field, is a difference maker, but he's only going to be on a limited pitch count out there. And imagine probably he only plays in kind of red zone situations and stuff. So I don't really think that upgrades this Chargers team too much in how the way that I'm looking at this game. And then also, listen, it's always nice to get an extra half a point. And this game is currently sitting 6.5 at most places right now, as opposed to 7. And we're getting the full 7 in the contest here.
The number is why this is my number one play of the in Circa. It's not my number one play in another contest I'm in because it was only 6.5. But yeah, the number, the 7 it's lovely. Gotta love it.
The other one that we are both on the same side of here is the Seahawks, and that is Seahawks minus 1.5. Now, I don't like not getting the best of this because if you guys listened to the podcast earlier in the week, I actually have a couple of teaser legs at Seahawks plus 2.5. So I was able to tease them up to 8.5 before that game on Monday night with the Browns. And so that game went off the board momentarily, came back on, huge 4-point swing here. But, Brett, at the end of the day, the only reason I don't like getting the best number is because of the teaser spot. But I mean, when you look at what we're moving through here, we're moving through 1, 0, and 1, and these are fairly insignificant numbers here. So it wasn't like the move from, the plus 2.5 to the 1.5 is us moving through a 3 or a 7 or something like that.
Yeah, look, unless you had the foresight of a Matt Brown who was able to get down on this so early, just throw away, just toss the opening line on this. This is where the line should be. And I still like the Seahawks.
Yeah. So Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams are both still questionable for the Browns here, but I'm not, this kind of burned me last week because I was, trying to figure out what I expected coaches to do. And that was why I was, backing the Chiefs against the Colts, because I just assumed that whenever the Colts took a look and said, hey, we have 2 of our very key players that are hurt here and we have a bye week next week, so let's go ahead and take advantage of that. Well, so let's look at this here. That being said, those were only kind of 1-week injuries with those guys. These are long-term nagging injuries with Ward and Greedy Williams that have been going on for several weeks now. The Browns are on bye next week. And Brett, I mean, they held them out last week. They held them out the week before that. Then now here you come into this game here where you understand that you're going to really need to do some winning here in the latter half of the season if you even have a remote chance of making the playoffs. Having that bye week come up next week, I don't know. If I'm coach or GM here, whoever ends up making this decision, to me, I'm probably, if these guys if they're not really close to 100%, then I'm holding both of these guys out because I get the bye next week. And then at that point, they will have had a month to mend, and they're both going to be very, very important parts of this defense as they head down the stretch. You
don't think there's a huge sense of urgency right now, though? I mean, this is a big game for them at home. Freddie Kitchens is going to just throw this game away. So if they're able to play, they're going to be in the lineup. But I'm with you. I mean, just rest these guys because they're in. Well, this is probably the worst division in football, right? They could go 6-2 in the second half of the season and probably make the playoffs. Why not just rest your guys during the bye week and come back healthy?
49ers have a top 5 pass rush grade according to PFF. Seahawks are down at 22nd, which I certainly don't love because one of the things we've seen is when you put Baker Mayfield under pressure, he just collapses. He is one of the absolute worst in the league right now when it comes to passing under pressure. That being said, they're not doing him any favors either, Brett, with the way that they're running the personnel, with the way that they're doing the play calling. And I just don't have any confidence whatsoever that this Browns coaching staff is going to be able to change in a week here, change their stripes really at all. And, I question Pete Carroll on times for being too conservative, but if you're asking me who is the better coaching staff in this game, I'm giving the edge to the Seahawks 11 times out of 10.
Yeah, of course. And look, the blueprint's drawn up for defeating this Browns team. You get after Baker Mayfield, you force him out of his comfort zone, which is a clean pocket where he lived at Oklahoma. I don't know. Maybe we needed to see this guy play a real defense before he was being crowned as the next Drew Brees. He's been really bad this year. There does not seem to be any chemistry or trust between him and his offensive line. He breaks the pocket way too early, and he's awful on the run. And now you've got Seattle coming in. They've had extra time to prepare for this game, and Cleveland on a short week. Everything points to Seattle here.
I like this again. Basically this is just a win, right? I mean, this is almost a money line bet here. Very, very, very unlikely for this thing to fall on one. So we're basically just betting the Seahawks to win this game. And I think that even though they are heading on the road here, I do think that this is, and what we're going to hear, you're going to hear this narrative if you're listening to this podcast. You're going to hear, it's a West Coast team heading to the East Coast, yada, yada. What we've seen in recent years, Brett, is, look, back in the day, before we had all this science with how to recover your body and how to treat your body and when's the optimal time to fly over and when's all these things like that. Like, we have, these guys are literally put in the very, very best situations to succeed each and every single week. Now, a decade ago, maybe even 5 years ago, before we got really, really heavy into all of the science and analytics and everything that goes on with these guys and their training regimens and eating routines and all of that. Sure, the East Coast, the West Coast to East Coast thing was definitely, something to monitor, but in recent years, we've seen it's played very little effect here, and certainly hasn't played near as much of effect earlier on in the season as it has later in the season when, again, even with all modern technology and science and training methods and recovery methods, your body just over the course of an NFL season just gets beat to hell. But, we're still fairly early in the season here. So I honestly, when I looked at this game, I didn't even take that into consideration. Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much money at stake here now. All precautions are taken. And again, they've had an extra 3 days to prepare here. So rest, I'm not all that concerned about, especially, traveling across the country. So I didn't even factor that in. Let's talk about the game that we're on the opposite side of that will get wiped off of the card here. That is Vikings and Eagles. You liked Vikings -3. I liked Eagles +3 in this one. Pretty interesting to see you backing the Vikings because this has been a team that you have been very much trying to avoid a lot of times here. I'm the guy that has actually been on the Vikings in certain situations, and glad I talked you off of that donkey play last week, but it doesn't matter because we just put more donkey plays on our card, so it doesn't really matter. All we did was replace one donkey play with another donkey play. But Vikings right tackle Josh Klein is out in this game. The Eagles only allowing 2.9 adjusted line yards per rush. That is the absolute best in the league. And what do we know about this Vikings team and Mike Zimmer? They want to run the ball. They are team #established the run. They ran off people off the coaching staff because they weren't running the ball enough to his liking. And this is a really good situation here for this Eagles front four and this Eagles front seven all together against this Vikings team. Now, listen, one of the things we have seen is we have at least seen the Vikings feast a little bit on whenever they play these teams that have weak secondaries here, but we normally have seen this happen against the two times this happened so far this year, Brett, has been against teams that are just bad at everything. And they were able to get Dalvin Cook. Basically, the pass game was still being used as a complement to Dalvin Cook. It wasn't used as an alternative to Dalvin Cook. And I think Dalvin Cook gets bottled up in this game. I think they are forced to go to the air. And then when they're forced to go to the air, that is when I really think things could go very badly for Kirk Cousins. And the other thing about this, while the coverage is not all that great for the Eagles, they are the fourth best rated pass rush in all of football, according to Pro Football Focus as well. And whenever Kirk Cousins doesn't have a lot of time and he feels uncomfortable in that pocket, he makes poor decisions. He does terrible things with the ball. He looks like he is not an NFL caliber quarterback here. So all things to me pointed to this being kind of an Eagles, especially in a taking money situation here. But interested to see why you were leaning towards the Vikings side. Well, this is a game theory contest play, less about the number and the matchup. I really wish we could have got mini -2.5. I'll definitely be playing that in the DraftKings Super Bowl this week. But I do see Philly being one of the more popular plays in this Circa contest, and I like this as a leverage spot with a team that does play really well at home. I have faded the Vikings the last 2 weeks. I do like them when they're at home, though. Cousins against this Eagles secondary is exciting, but like you said, we have to hope he gets enough protection here to make throws against this pass rush. That is definitely a concern with this Vikes offensive line, but Thielen and Diggs, very good at creating separation off the line. I don't think Minnesota's going to have trouble scoring here. I like this spot, but I haven't been great with the Vikings so far this year, so I don't mind tossing this one.
Yeah, it's interesting you think this will be a popular play. That would actually be the guys in the contest going against where the money is coming here. It is -3 at FanDuel right now, but it's juiced 120. It is already moved to 3.5 Vikings at DraftKings right now. So at the very least, it looks like the money is coming in and the backing is coming in on the Vikings. So I don't know if the contest actually is going to lean towards the Eagles or not here.
I typically look at bets placed for the contest. That's the metric I look at when I'm trying to figure out what's going to be popular. So bets placed, I mean, it's pretty clear the Eagles are getting the most bets on this game.
Yeah, I've actually gone the opposite way, because I guess you're overanalyzing this, but I guess I think if you're ponying up $1,000 to enter a handicapping contest, and if you live elsewhere, you're putting up another $300 to buy a proxy and whatnot. I don't know. I guess the total number of bets, to me, I feel like you would probably fall more in the category of handle as opposed to number of bets, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's certainly a lot of casual people that play these things, but I would assume that it is higher populated by people who are at least somewhat know what they're doing. But maybe that's a wrong assumption.
It's definitely more predictive in the Westgate. There are a lot more casuals in the Westgate contest, so I think you're right. As far as that goes with Circa, I think is less predictive there. The DraftKings Super Pool, the Eagles will be extremely popular this week, and that's kind of why I like the Vikings there. But
right,
yeah, we'll see. I really think the Eagles, I think, are going to be a top 3 play.
All right, we'll get to my must make. So that'll put us with 3 plays on our card here. And that is the Rams -3.5 against this 49ers team. And one, I think this is going to be a pretty interesting spot where I think we might be a little contrarian in this as well, after seeing the Rams lose. The last memory that people have is the Rams losing and the 49ers absolutely destroying. But it's another one of those long week, short week situations, right? So the Rams have a long week coming off of the Thursday night game, and the 49ers have a short week coming off of the Monday night game. So not only extra days to rest up for this Rams team, but extra days to prepare for this 49ers team. Todd Gurley is doubtful, but you and I were talking a little bit before we went on air here that, I mean, when you compare what Todd Gurley's really meant to this team, and then you see whenever Malcolm Brown plays and gets reps for this team, I am certainly not going to say, and I'm not that guy that's going to, crank this to level 11 and be a Gurley hater or whatever. I'm not going to say that they are exactly equal or anything like that. But what I will say is it is certainly not a precipitous drop off between Todd Gurley and Malcolm Brown.
I haven't noticed any difference when they're on the field. We see it. We see a difference in the stats because Gurley's getting touchdown opportunity, but he has not looked good. They're the same player.
And if you like these grading stats, if you follow those out there and you hear us mention these on this podcast a lot of times, Malcolm Brown is actually rated at running back literally like right behind Todd Gurley. So, I mean, like as far as people who are kind of watching these things with their eyes and then grading every play when these guys are actually in there, Malcolm Brown is actually right there neck and neck with Todd Gurley as far as rating so far this year. The other thing that really pushed me to the Rams in this one, Brett, is the 49ers are going to be down 2 starting offensive linemen, Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey. And then you have to also add in Kyle Juszczyk, who, by the way, fullbacks are basically phased out in the NFL at this point, and the 49ers were using him so incredibly much. They love to run the ball. They run the ball more than any team in the NFL. Now you take out 2 offensive linemen and the fullback, which they have been using exclusively in these run formations that they have going on here. I think this is now a big advantage to an Aaron Donald and a Dante Fowler, that they are going to be going up against backups and not having to deal with a player the caliber of Kyle Juszczyk when it comes to opening up these holes and springing these guys for a little bit longer and all that. And so at that point, I feel like, we're going to have to see a situation where Jimmy G is going to actually have to make plays here. He's going to actually have to do something with his arm, which is something he has not had to do all season long this year. They have just had their way really on the ground. And, that is much to do with the fact that they had a Joe Staley, and Mike McGlinchey, and a Kyle Juszczyk. And with those 3 guys out of there, for me, that is a huge red flag on this 49ers team, and one of the biggest reasons that kind of pushed me over to the Rams as well. I was leaning Rams anyway, but this was certainly something that kind of helped me solidify this pick.
Yeah, the zone running scheme is one of the reasons why the Niners have been so successful on offense this year, and they will be without those 3 components that you just talked about. This is a great play. I get it. I totally get it. Everything points to Rams here. Extended week versus a short week for the 49ers. A great bounce back spot at home while their stock is low. And the stock could not be higher on the Niners right now. So I do like the Rams. The matchup on the offensive line is what terrifies me, though. This Rams offensive line is bad. And the Niners are a top 5. They might be the best pass rush in the NFL. That's really the only pause I have, because we've seen what happens when Goff is under pressure. But I agree. This is the week you have to hop right back on LA, and it's a good spot.
Yeah, even with Goff under pressure, right? I mean, yeah, I do expect him to make a mistake or 2 in this game. But one of the things we've seen in these other games where he's been under pressure and they've kind of gotten done, like, let's look back to the Bucs game, right? I mean, that Bucs offense is explosive. I mean, you have big-armed Jameis Winston and Mike Evans and Godwin out there. I mean, this is an explosive offense that can actually take advantage of these things. Like and maybe they'll prove me wrong this week. The 49ers have done really well in proving me wrong so far this season, but I don't feel this pass game is anywhere near the type of level that it would take to really kind of keep up with this Rams offense, even if there is a turnover or 2, if you have to do it on the arm of Jimmy Garoppolo. So, and this wide receiver core, Brett, I mean, it's one of those things where it's a bunch of fine players. Like they're fine. Like each one of them in their own right is a fine NFL player, but none of these guys are, if I asked you to sit here and start rattling off the best wide receivers in the NFL, I imagine you're not going to name one of these guys until you get to a 40 or 50 or something like that,
Yeah.
So I just don't see.
They do have George Kittle, who is the best tight end in football. That's awesome.
They do have Kittle. They do have the Kittle.
Their wide receivers are bad, man.
Yeah.
Dante Pettis and Deebo Samuel have been really bad so far this year.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just, Goff's in like you said, if they can actually somehow scheme a way to keep Goff clean, I mean, his clean pocket rating is better than Jimmy G's. We've seen Goff, if he has time to throw, I mean, like, obviously all those weapons, I mean, it's going to be, it'll be, I'm not going to say easy for them, but I mean, listen, if he has time to throw, he's got just a plethora of people to throw to there, and this offense runs like a top, but it's going to be pretty interesting here, but I think this is just a good spot. Long week, short week, 49ers down 3 of their real key components to the thing that they want to do the most, which is run the ball. And so like me some Rams here. We'll put that on the card. So now we got to fill out these last 2 here. I'd like to jump over to one of your plays here. This is one that I have had the absolute most trouble trying to handicap this week. So the fact that it made your card, I certainly want to hear why that is. And you go Texans with the +4 on the road at the Chiefs. Chiefs sitting at -4 right now.
Yeah, I've got the Texans because this line looks wrong to me. I think the Texans are better than what the Chiefs are putting on the field this week. A hobbled Patrick Mahomes running for his life behind this offensive line that now looks to be without its starting left tackle and left guard this week. And who is Mahomes throwing the ball to? This offense was a horror show last week with Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle running meaningful routes. This allows teams to focus on Travis Kelce, take him away as a reliable option in the passing game. Even with Mahomes doing the things that he does, and he is tremendous, I'm not afraid of this offense right now if I'm the Houston Texans. And then on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs will be without their best player on defense, Chris Jones, who left Sunday night game with a groin injury. This team it's lacking good football players, and Houston has a lot of good football players, starting at quarterback with Deshaun Watson and his buffet of weapons. I mean, apparently Will Fuller is back. You don't know what to expect of him from week to week, but you add Fuller to DeAndre Hopkins, and I don't know how the Chiefs are going to stop this passing game. And yeah. Houston also great at getting to the quarterback, and they're going to be facing those backups on the Chiefs' offensive line. So I don't know. I don't think people are taking into account just how banged up this Kansas City team is right now.
Pretty. This is the reason why I've had so much trouble here is because, right before we get on this podcast, a report comes through that there's a good chance Tyreek Hill is going to play for the Chiefs this week. Now, Sammy Watkins is going to be out again, but getting Tyreek Hill back is, in my opinion, a game changer for this Chiefs team, because what we've seen in the short time that they've been on the field together is when Tyreek Hill is out there, Patrick Mahomes averages over 3 touchdown passes a game. When Tyreek Hill is not out there, he averages under 2 touchdown passes per game. And that makes perfect sense because Tyreek Hill is the dude that gets behind defenses a couple of times a game. And as long as they can connect on that, you're getting these long bomb touchdowns. And now we have to kind of play speculative here because we do this on Friday afternoons. Of course, we don't have to submit the picks fully until Saturday afternoons, and there's more chance for injury news to pop out here as to whether Tyreek Hill is going to go or not. You were talking about, playmakers and how do they get this done? Does it change the way you view this game at all if Tyreek Hill is out there for the Chiefs?
Not really, because I don't know what his role is going to be. Tyreek Hill is not a great wide receiver. This is a guy who relies on his speed and quickness to make plays, and we haven't seen what he looks like yet. Like, is he fully back from this injury? I doubt it. So I'm not really factoring that into my capping here. I don't think it makes that huge a difference.
Yeah, I guess I just look the Texans in the bottom third of the league in coverage grades, in pass coverage, according, not only PFF, but DVOA as well. And, it's one of those things where I look at this and say, if Tyreek Hill comes back, if he's good enough to play, if he's healthy enough to play in this game, then they think that he's good to go. They flirted with playing him the last couple of weeks and he hasn't gotten out there. So if they're going to go ahead and roll the dice with him being on the field, then they feel that he's healthy. And so that's the scary thing to me is, I think he's probably worth a touchdown in this game against this Houston secondary. So that's kind of like I already put 7 points on the board there for the Chiefs as it is. And then the way that you go after this Chiefs team is on the ground, right? And so we definitely know that the rush offense for this Texans team. Listen, if we really kind of want to go at it, it doesn't really blow your skirt up, right? That's kind of the only thing for me. I was leaning all week towards the 100% towards the Texans in this. I just, smart on Circa to put this number at 4 because they knew sometime between now and when this goes, when the games actually kick off, that there's an outside chance that the Chiefs could have ruled out Patrick Mahomes should that ankle have, retweaked it in practice or something, that Tyreek Hill doesn't play. They assumed probably that Sammy Watkins was not going to play, which actually is the case. He's going to be out as well. Still getting more than a field goal with this Texans team. I will go ahead and I will submit to that, my friend. I am okay with it. Like I said, I was leaning.
Wow.
I was leaning this way. It. I was leaning this way anyway, especially, look, this thing opened at 7.5 at some shops, right? If you could have gotten 7.5, you would be feeling like $1 million right now holding that ticket. Like that would have just been amazing. But what we did see from the Chiefs, which is something that I think is that we can't really just overlook here, that we have to understand, is Patrick Mahomes, the thing that makes Patrick Mahomes, the stuff that makes our jaws drop, the plays that he makes that literally no other quarterback in the NFL can make, really and truly relies on his athleticism. And if that ankle, I know he says it's fine, but what's he going to say, Brett? Is he going to walk up to that podium and say like, yeah, I think probably on Sunday, this ankle is probably going to be at about 70%. He's not going to say that.
Yeah. And they're going to go after him hard against this offensive line that can't protect him. So there's a high chance of re-injury here too.
So let's take a look at my other play here before we get to your last one. I have Jags minus 1.5 here at home against the Saints. All of a sudden, Alvin Kamara now very questionable for this game. He pops up on the injury report on Thursday, which is never good, and then a DNP, did not practice on Friday. And when you're trending in the opposite direction of how you're supposed to be trending throughout the week, that is always a very, very bad sign. Now you can also go ahead, and this was not the case when these lines popped out too, Brett, was that it looks like Jalen Ramsey's going to play. If everything, I guess, is trending towards Jalen Ramsey playing in this game. And if that's the case, then you put Jalen Ramsey on Michael Thomas, and now what does this Saints team become through the air? You're going to beat this team with Ted Ginn, with Traquan Smith. Is that what we're going to do here? And if for whatever reason, Alvin Kamara does sit out this game, and listen, if he pops up on the report on Thursday and doesn't practice on Friday, even if he gives it a go, he is definitely not 100%. Like, he is definitely going to be, trying to gut it out, whatever it is. But like you're talking about, re-injury factor has to be super high for someone like Kamara, who had to sit out all of Friday's practice for whatever reason that's going on here. Saints defensive line does rank 6th in adjusted sack rates. They've got 16 sacks on the year. Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport have been really, really good for this Saints team. They're, in the top 10 for quarterback hurries. They're in the top 8 for pressures. So there's likely a chance that they get after Gardner Minshew enough here to kind of create some disruption. But it's not a very big spread, right? We're talking 1.5. So we only need a field goal here for this Jaguars team to prevail, to cover for us. And you give me no Kamara, you give me Jalen Ramsey shadowing Michael Thomas, and now Teddy Bridgewater on the road, outdoors, outside of a dome, where, by the way, if you guys remember, he's basically played in a dome his whole career. When he was in Minnesota, that was a dome situation as well. Then he goes to the Saints, dome situation there too. So outdoors, on the grass, less fast track here for a Ted Ginn to, do one of those crazy Ted Ginn things where he catches a 70-yard touchdown bomb or whatever. And you got to try to get by here with Latavius Murray. I just, pretty big come down to earth spot here for the Saints, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. Teddy getting all the love now that they're actually throwing the ball downfield again. They're getting win after win, but now they go to Jacksonville, one of the few teams that can penetrate this offensive line, make Teddy miserable. Plus, like you said, they're getting Jalen Ramsey back this week. That's just icing on the cake. That's a huge addition, obviously, with Michael Thomas lining up on the other side for New Orleans. I just see this as a good sell opportunity on New Orleans. So I like the Jags here as well.
Look at this. We were able to fill out a card without even some bickering. I mean, we did have one against each other, but hey, I think we both made good cases for the Vikings and Eagles. This will certainly be a fun one to track here as we continue to monitor when we're on opposite sides here. We weren't on opposite sides last week, so here in week 6 will be the next one. It will be Matt on the Eagles, and then Brett on the Vikings, and we'll see here. This is your chance to even things up this week, which will let us know that, hey, neither one of us know anything. We're both, when we're on opposite sides, we'll be 4-4 should the Vikings cover for you here in this one. But look, I like these picks a lot, and just to full transparency here, I like a lot of these picks enough to where I'm going to put real actual money on these. And so this isn't just one of those, it'll be a tournament pick type thing. I'm going to put some real cash on some of these picks that we have going in this game as well. Certainly on the Rams, certainly on the Jags. I already have money on the Seahawks as it is anyway. So I'm feeling pretty good. When I have enough confidence that I'm going to go ahead and invest my own cash in these things, then that makes me feel pretty good about the picks for the week.
All right, so we got Rams, Jags, Steelers, Seahawks, and Texans. Is that right?
Yeah, Steelers +7, Seahawks -1.5, Rams -3.5, Texans +4, and then Jags 1.5.
Love it. It's a great card.
I like it a lot as well. Just real quick, let's run through. You had Jets +7 here. I don't hate that one either. I'm just a little bit more I'm just a little bit more inclined with the Jags at home here with this situation with the Saints, especially now that this Kamara news came through our Twitter machine literally, half an hour before we are about to tape this thing here. But Cowboys look to be without two of their main offensive linemen, and it's kind of the same thing we're talking about with some of these other games whenever we're trying to handicap these deals, that these offensive linemen don't get all the love, and you don't get to put them on your fantasy team, and you don't get to you don't see their faces all that much because they're not the guys doing the interviews at the end of the game. But Brett, I mean, you can't, especially a team like the Cowboys that is built on having these stud horse offensive linemen to not only create holes for Zeke, but to give Dak Prescott time to throw, because he, like some of these other quarterbacks, is actually really good when he has time to throw out of the pocket. And anytime you give him any sort of distress, he just falls off of a cliff as far as efficiency goes. So, Cowboys -7 in that one on the road at the Jets, and you had Jets +7.
Yeah, look, I am not Team Dak. I don't think Dak Prescott's good at football. I think he's been lifted up by this exceptional offensive line for years, and we saw evidence of that last week. Tyron Smith didn't play. Lyle Collins left the game with an injury, and Dak melted until the game was already over, and then the Packers just sat back and prevent and let Prescott pick apart that defense. But if Smith and Collins are out this week and it looks that way, how can you make this team a touchdown favorite on the road? They both have such a huge impact on the efficiency of this offense. And the Jets are getting healthier. They get Sam Darnold back. Quinnen Williams appears to be back. These are two teams passing each other in and out of the infirmary right now. So I like the Jets quite a bit.
Yeah, really wish I probably would have been all in here on the Jets on this if Chris Herndon had not gone out there and hurt himself running routes on the side of the field. That's unfortunate. Hamstring injury. It might miss a couple of weeks here for the Jets. I mean, that giving Sam Darnold that one extra weapon, especially the big body for the red zone, would have really, really been super beneficial here for this Jets team here. But, typical Jets, right? I mean, the guy gets back off suspension and then hurts himself running routes on the side of the field.
Do they even have a tight end on the roster? Who are they throwing the ball to over the middle of the field now?
A guy that I've been stashing too, and y'all don't care about my fantasy team, but a guy that I've been stashing in fantasy as well, patiently waiting for this guy to finally be able to get back on the field, and this happens. So, yeah, super.
Oh, Ryan Griffin. Oh, boy.
Ryan Griffin. If there was one, what's the one game before we get out of here that barely missed your card? If somebody if there's something that made our card that our listeners don't agree with, what was the one game here that barely kind of missed making it for you?
Good question. It was, I had the Rams up pretty high. I loved the number there, especially. So that was there. And the other one, I'm not sure there was another one.
I'll tell you mine. Mine was the Falcons at under a field goal at the Cardinals here. I mean, this seems like the ultimate kind of buy low spot for this Falcons team, who has looked absolutely atrocious. I mean, don't get me wrong. If this was a contest where we were allowed to play totals, then yeah, I mean, I'm just taking the over in that game all day long. I was sitting at 50.5 or something. There's going to be points in this game. They're going to be able to move the ball on each other. But I just, look. This young Cardinals team, we've seen them fight, Brett, but we've seen them continually kind of come up short. They really just haven't been able to get over the hump against any of these real football teams. And so as bad as both of these defenses are, the offensive side of the ball is certainly better for the Falcons. I mean, you're still looking at a Cardinals team here that has Christian Kirk that's questionable, and now David Johnson being listed as questionable as well for the Cardinals. So, I mean, at under a field goal, the Falcons was kind of the one that barely didn't make my card here.
Yeah, I get it. I didn't have a strong lean on this game, but I have no problem fading Kingsbury at all.
Right.
Ever.
I mean, seriously, the way that this has gone, I mean, pretty crazy stuff. Just to wrap this up, guys, injury news everyone's going to be monitoring. Todd Gurley, doubtful. David Johnson, questionable. Alvin Kamara, I would say more than questionable, probably very questionable here. Tyreek Hill, is questionable. Sammy Watkins is on the bad side of questionable, which, in the old days would have been doubtful, I guess, or whatever. Christian Kirk, as I just mentioned. Kenny Stills questionable for the Texans in that game. Mark Andrews questionable for the Ravens. He's been a pretty big part of this passing game for Lamar Jackson. He is expected to play. He seems like he's listed as questionable every single week on the practice report there, but also Hollywood Brown questionable for the Ravens as well, which, Brett, this was, we talk about games that just didn't make the card here. Ravens -11 seems like people wouldn't want to lay that number. Seems like a pretty good game theory play for this Ravens team, but with Andrew, the outside chance of Andrews not playing and the likely chance of Hollywood Brown not playing, just something I wasn't willing to pull the trigger on.
Yeah, not only that, they lost their best player on defense there in Tony Jefferson. I don't know how does the secondary stop anybody now? They don't have Jimmy Smith. They don't have Tony Jefferson. Earl Thomas looks old. So this is a game where Andy Dalton could just pick them apart in the fourth quarter and you got a backdoor cover. Right.
And that's exactly how I kind of looked. Yeah. I was like, how terrible would it be to sit there and hold this Ravens ticket and basically they get up by 20 points and then you watch as the fourth quarter and then, Dalton puts across two garbage scores and then you're hating yourself that you took it.
Yeah, that's the script I drew up for this game. I love Lamar and Mark Ingram this week. I think they're both going to put up huge numbers, but I kind of like Andy Dalton too because the Ravens aren't going to even try to stop them in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. Guys, we really appreciate you listening here. Hopefully you gained some insight into some of these games. And again, as always, head over to playpicks.com, head over to thelines.com, and you can find all of the picks for the week and things that are broken down as well, doing videos for the island games as well. Might even start adding in some other videos along the way. Brett's getting upgraded over there on all his equipment. You probably noticed how silky smooth he sounds on his new microphone and mixer setup. We're going to have a nice little camera and tripod setup going on pretty soon, so hopefully we can talk even some more football on our YouTube channels over there as well. So looking forward to this week here. Again, Steelers +7, Seahawks -1.5, Rams -3.5, Texans +4, and the Jags at home -1.5. For Brett, I'm Matt. We'll talk to you guys next week.